So we follow the narration here. Jerome writes, I spent the Easter holidays, which began a few days later, at Le Havre, sleeping at Aunt Plantier's and taking nearly all my meals at Uncle Bucolin's. So he could not stay at Uncle Bucolin's house anymore because his mother was not there. So it was kind of odd with all his cousins around. So he stayed at Aunt Flockie's instead, but ate his meals at Uncle Bucolin's. And now this character, Félicie Plotier, who comes to replace or kind of take the place of Jerome's mother, is introduced here. And she is a very interesting character in the sense that she is the opposite of Jerome's mother. So you know that Jerome's mother was very reserved, quiet, calm, thoughtful, but Félicie is completely different. And to the temperament of Jerome and Elisa, she appeared to be, they started disliking her. Okay. My aunt Félicie Plantier's was the best of women, but neither my cousins nor I were on very intimate terms with her. She was in a continual state of breathless bustle. Her gestures were ungentle and her voice unmusical. She harried us with caresses, and at odd moments of the day, when the need for effusion seized her, she would suddenly overwhelm us with the floods of her affection. So you see, even her affection, her kisses were disliked by Jerome and Elisa. Uncle Bucolet was very fond of her, but merely from the tone of his voice when he spoke to her, it was easy to understand how greatly he had preferred my mother. Therefore, she is but a poor replacement of Jerome's mother. Why I said that her character was interesting, as we will see that the family members, they talk about similarities and differences. And then we see that Félicie Plotier's character was more like Juliet, and Jerome's mother's character was more like that of Elisa. Right. So they provide a kind of contrasting, outlooks, contrasting characters in the novel. The aunt says one evening, I don't know what you are meaning to do this summer, but I will wait to hear your plans before settling my own, if I can be useful to you. I have not thought much about it yet, I answered. Perhaps I shall travel. She went on, you know that both here and at Fongouzemart you will always be welcome. You will be doing your uncle and Juliet a pleasure by going to them. Elisa, you mean? So Jerome says that I will be doing a pleasure to Elisa. Of course, I beg your pardon. Would you believe it? I thought it was Juliet you were in love with. Until a month ago when your uncle told me. You know I am very fond of you all, but I don't know you very well. I have seen so little of you. And then I am not very observant. I have no time to mind other people's business. I always saw you playing with Juliet. I thought to myself, she is so pretty, so gay. Now, Félicie likes Juliet because she is like her. The corollary of which is that Félicie does not like Elisa because she is very unlike her. And we can forgive her for believing that Jerome loved Juliet because the fact that Juliet loved Jerome was more or less apparent to people excepting Jerome. On the other hand, Jerome and Elisa, they were more reserved, or they spoke about religion, literature. So people did not think that they were in love. They were discussants. They were always in conversation. They were more intellectually oriented. But Juliet always played with him. So a person with a less literary point of view would think that Jerome was in love with Juliet. So Jerome replies, yes, I like playing with her still, but it is Elisa I love. All right, it is your affair. As for me, I hardly know her at all, so to speak. She talks less than her sister. I suppose as you have chosen her, you must have good reasons for it. So, Aunt Felicie does not see any reason for loving Elisa. And her principal objection is that she speaks very little. Therefore, she says that you must have good reasons. But Aunt, I didn't choose to love her, and I have never thought what reasons I had for. So Jerome expects Aunt Felicie to understand his spontaneous love for Elisa, which is difficult for people like Aunt Felicie. Oh well, my dear, I thought that my presence there might make things easier, and I have arranged to keep part of the summer free. So Aunt Felicie offers to go and live at Fungusmar and take the place of Jerome's mother. And she comes and lives there, but as we will see that the children did not like her, and therefore her coming there was not of much use. If I ask Miss Ashburton, she would certainly come with pleasure. Yes, I know she is coming already, but that is not enough. I will come too. Oh, I don't pretend I shall take your poor mother's place, she added, suddenly bursting into sobs. But I can look after the housekeeping, and, well, you and your uncle and Elisa need not feel uncomfortable. So she offers to, live with them at Fungusmar, and out of duty towards them. Aunt Felicie was mistaken as to the efficacy of her presence. To tell the truth, we were only uncomfortable because of her. They were very uncomfortable. In accordance with her announcement, she settled herself at Fungusmar at the beginning of July, and Miss Ashburton and I joined her there soon after. Under the pretense of helping Elisa to look after it, she filled the house, which had always been so peaceful, with a continual hubbub. The zeal with which she set about being agreeable to us and making things easier, as she called it, was so overdone that Elisa and I were nearly always constrained and practically speechless when she was by. So they felt it very difficult to converse. Whenever Aunt Felicie was around, Jerome could not speak to Elisa freely. She must have thought us very cold, and even if we had not been silent, would she have been able to understand the nature of our love? Juliet's character, on the other hand, fitted in well enough with this exuberance, and perhaps my affection for my aunt was tinged with a certain resentment at seeing her show such a marked preference for the younger of her nieces. So Aunt Felicie liked Juliet over Elisa, and Jerome and Elisa felt constrained to speak naturally before her. She was very noisy, and therefore they did not like her. Then she decided to leave. My aunt had barely stayed a fortnight at Fungusmar. As soon as she was gone, the house was able to sink back again into peace. There dwelt in it once more a serenity that was very like happiness. My mourning had not cast a shadow on our love, but had made it weightier. And then one day they were discussing Aunt Felicie, and they were all critical of her. And then Uncle Ducolin told them that you are judging her too severely, because it is with age and with lot of circumstances, difficult circumstances, that people's character sometimes become, not so amiable or rough. So he told them that originally Aunt Felicie was like Juliet, very charming, exuberant, and so on. Everything which you dislike in my poor sister is the result of circumstances with which I am too well acquainted to be able to criticize her as severely as you do. There is not a single pleasing quality of youth which may not deteriorate in old age. What you call commotion in Felicie was at first nothing but charming high spirits, spontaneity, impulsiveness, and grace. We were not very different, I assure you, from what you are today. I was rather like you, Jerome, more so perhaps than I imagined. Felicie greatly resembled Juliet as she now is. Yes, even physically. And after he says all these things, then Miss Ashburton quietly tells Jerome, it is your mother that Eliza is like. So we have here the types set out. Through this means of comparison, Felicie was like Juliet, charming, buoyant. Jerome's mother was like Eliza, quiet, graceful. And Uncle Bucola was like Jerome. Therefore, Uncle Bucola liked Jerome's mother more, just as Jerome likes Eliza more. But at the same time, Juliet is also there in their lives, and similarly Aunt Felicie was also there. So a character that is different. And Juliet's character in this novel has a very important role. She joins many threads. She is the character who kind of, apart from Jerome, who lives through the novel from the beginning to the end. Not only that, her love for Jerome also remains constant. Even after she was married to another man, she had children with, by that man, and much later Jerome comes and meets her and tries to find out, or rather she tries to find out, about Jerome's emotion, whether Jerome was still constant to Eliza or not. And Jerome says yes. And then she does not say anything. But later, Jerome discovers Eliza's diaries, from which he comes to know that Juliet loved him. And for that reason, Eliza did not agree to marry him. And then, by reading that diary, by knowing that, he comes to realize that in the last meeting, after so many years, even then Juliet loved him and wanted an affirmation from him, but didn't get it. So if we may call it some kind of a, pathetic scenario, I am not calling it tragic. So we see that the virtues of love, of constancy, Jerome is constant to Eliza, Juliet is constant to Jerome. Therefore, Jerome is constant in his rejection of Juliet. Okay. And besides these three, we have the other character, Abel Gautier, who comes in between, who falls in love with Juliet and comes to know that Juliet loves Jerome and even tells him, but Jerome did not take him seriously. So much later, by reading Alisa's diary, Jerome comes to know that what Abel had said was true. But he never tried to do anything to, make Juliet happy. Therefore, this novel is a sordid tale of love, rejection, at the same time of constancy. A peculiar kind of, entanglement of four people. Besides these four people, there is also Juliet's husband, who also loves Juliet, but Juliet doesn't love him. So there are 5 people, and we have several stories of love, rejection, constancy, and so on. Then in the summer vacation, Jerome regularly meets Elisa. I told her what I dared. Okay, now Jerome is talking about Juliet. She was the messenger between her sister and me. I talked to her interminably of our love, and she never seemed tired of listening. I told her what I dared not tell Elisa, with whom excess of love made me constrained and shy. So he was very free with Juliet, but he could not tell Elisa about his love. Elisa seemed to lend herself to this child's play and to be delighted that I should talk so happily to her sister, ignoring or feigning to ignore that in reality we talked only of her. Then Elisa talks about her dream to Jerome, and Jerome also talks about her dream to Elisa. Now, as you know that dreams have always been there in literature, beginning from Chaucer's time. In English literature you find dreams here also, in French literature, in the French romances in the Middle Ages. And in modern times, dream acquires some importance after Freud's discussion of dreams, interpretation of dreams, Freud's theory, where Freud suggested that dreams often reflect one's unconscious, one's anxieties are reflected in the dreams. So here Elisa tells about her dream. I have had a melancholy dream, said Elisa to me on one of the last mornings of the holidays. I was alive and you were dead. No, I didn't see you die. It was merely that you were dead. It was horrible. It was so impossible that I managed to get it granted for you to be simply absent. We were parted and I felt that there was a way of getting to you. I tried to find out how, and I made such an effort to succeed that it woke me up. The dream of death of somebody is very common, and often in dreams, the reality is reversed. So here we see Elisa was actually thinking of some kind of a separation from Jerome. So probably in her unconscious, she was thinking that their love could never be fulfilled and they would remain separated. And this separation anxiety got reflected in this dream where she dreamed that Jerome died. But what happened in reality later was the reverse, that Elisa died, leading to their separation. I felt as if I were still parted from you, going to be parted from you for a long, long time. And she added very low, all my life, and that all our lives we should have to make a great effort. Why? Each of us a great effort to come together again. Now Jerome did not understand these speeches by Elisa at all. What were the difficulties that Elisa had in her relationship with Jerome? Why they could not meet? Jerome could not understand. Because of his blind spot. He did not know about Juliet's love. He did not know how Elisa was affected by the idea of making Juliet unhappy. He did not know how Elisa wanted to sacrifice for her sister. He also did not know that Elisa wanted Jerome to be a saint and therefore did not want to lead her to the carnal way of life by marrying him, lead him to the carnal way of life by marrying him. So all these several restraints of Elisa, Jerome did not understand any of these. So we see at the beginning of this novel or most of the novels, Jerome being in a constant confusion. And unfortunately, since he is the principal narrator, therefore the initial effect of the novel on the reader is that the reader is also in confusion. So if the reader wants to understand and explain the novel, the early chapters, that could be possible only if he had a full reading of the novel. Because the later chapters give the explanations of the confusions of the earlier chapters. And later means very late. So Jerome understands the whole story more or less fully only at the end. And therefore for the reader also, the novel can be fully understood only at the end. But the course of the novel is a course of confusion. If at any point you have any question, you can stop and ask me. Then that is why Elisa talks about effort. An effort to come close to each other, an effort to keep this love alive even though there might be perpetual separation. So all this is not understood by Jerome. I did not take these words seriously, or perhaps I was afraid to take them seriously. With a beating heart and in a sudden fit of courage, I said to her, as though protesting, "Well, as for me this morning, I dreamt that I was going to marry you, so surely that nothing would be able to part us except death." So Jerome also had a dream, and his dream is very simple. It is a dream of wish fulfillment. So he wanted to marry Elisa, so he dreamt that he married Elisa, and that they would remain together until the death of any of them. To this, Elisa has a very philosophical question. "Do you think that death is able to part?" asked she. I mean, Jerome does not understand the question. "I think that death, on the contrary, is able to bring together, bring together what has been parted in life." So Elisa is thinking about the afterlife, like a true Christian. And this earthly life is not that important to a true Christian. So it is through death that all the souls unite in the afterlife. Therefore, in the Christian sense, death is only the beginning, not the end. The whole of this conversation sank into us so deeply that I can still hear the very intonation of the words we used, and yet I did not realize all their gravity until later. So this is going to be the perpetual state with Jerome. He does not realize the gravity, or in other words, he does not realize the meaning at all, or the import of Elisa's speeches until much later. Then in the next section, Juliet is introduced. She has already been introduced, but here she is described by Jerome through a dialogue. So Juliet is speaking to Jerome. And again, this is an incident, this leads to overhearing, the second overhearing. So this time Juliet and Jerome are in conversation, and Alyssa overhears them. So Alyssa was in the same place in the garden where Jerome was earlier, where she could not be seen. And Jerome and Juliet are talking, and Alyssa overhears them. And Alyssa immediately understands that Juliet is greatly in love with Jerome. And therefore, when she appears to them, she appears very pale. But Jerome does not understand at all that Juliet was in love with him. "What were you repeating yesterday to Alyssa?" she asked. "When do you mean?" "When you stayed behind us on the query bench." "Oh, some verses of Baudelaire," I think. Repeated, that is, recited. So Alyssa and Jerome, they used to recite poems from memory to each other. Jerome never thought that Juliet was capable of taking part in this kind of intellectual conversation. So he never recited any poem to her. Therefore here we see that Juliet wants Jerome to know that what he does to Alyssa, he can do the same with Juliet also. That is, she can also be his intellectual partner, which he does not think at the moment. So they were reciting a poem by Baudelaire. What were they? Won't you say them to me? Bientôt nous plongerons dans le froid ténèbres. I began rather ungraciously. This is a line from Baudelaire. Very soon we will plunge into the old darkness. Obviously a reference to death. But no sooner had I started than she interrupted me and took up the lines in a changed and trembling voice. Adieu vive clarté de nos étés trop courts. The second line from Baudelaire. Adieu, living clarity of our very short summer. What, you know them? I cried, extremely astonished. I thought you didn't care for poetry. Why? Because you never repeat me any, said she, laughing, though in a rather forced way. Sometimes you seem to think I am perfectly idiotic. Then she asked him, you are going away the day after tomorrow. That is, Jerome's vacation had ended and he would leave for Paris. Yes, I must. What are you going to do this winter? It is my first year at the École Normale. When do you think of marrying Alyssa? Not before I have done my military service, and indeed not before I have a better idea of what I mean to do afterwards. So, Juliet is interested in knowing about when Jerome is going to be engaged to Alyssa, when he is going to marry Alyssa, and so on. And Jerome does not mind replying to these questions because he thinks that Juliet is innocently asking these questions. But obviously when Alyssa overhears these conversations, she understands that Juliet wants to confirm that Jerome loves Alyssa and will marry Alyssa. Because if that is not confirmed, then Juliet has a chance. But as we see that Jerome is very undecided, and he says that I am not thinking of immediately marrying her, not before my military service is over, and when I know what I will do later. Don't you know yet? I don't want to know yet. Too many things appeal to me. I want to put off for as long as I can, having to choose and settle down to only one thing. Is it reluctance to settle down that makes you put off getting engaged too. Okay, so if you are not going to marry, why don't you get engaged? I shrugged my shoulders without answering. She insisted. Then what are you waiting for? Why don't you get engaged at once? Why should we get engaged? Isn't it enough to know that we do and shall belong to each other without proclaiming it to the world? Since I choose to devote my whole life to her, do you think it would be nobler to bind my love by promises? Not I. The vows seem to me to be an insult to love. I should only want to be engaged if I distrusted her. It is not Alyssa that I distrust. This is what Juliet says. And then she stops in the middle. So who does she distrust? What she means here is that I do not distrust Alyssa. It is not that Alyssa will play foul with me, but I distrust myself. That is, will I be able to control my passion for you? But as usual, her words remain unsaid or half said. But even though she does not utter these words, Alyssa understands everything. Why Juliet is so desperate about knowing what is going to happen to Jerome and Alyssa in their relationship. So we see that Jerome doesn't have a clue. He should have, suspected or at least wondered why was Juliet so interested in this. And in Jerome's, speech that I hate promises, I do not think that love can be bound by promises, love is much greater and so on. So there is, we see a lot of idealism here, but no practical interest. So engagement is a practical thing. So when lovers engage socially, then they make promises not only to themselves but to the society. Also they declare that they have made commitments to each other. So Jerome is oblivious of this practical aspect of engagement. And why is this engagement necessary? Because it kind of channelizes the possibilities. So once people are engaged, then ordinarily that leads to marriage. So the chances of straying after engagement are much less. But we see that Jerome does not understand the value of these social institutions of engagement, marriage and so on. And it is not that he is fully confident about their love. Perhaps he is, but he is kind of foolishly confident that their love would be eternal, even though it is not, it does not end in marriage. So on this issue, Jerome is not very clear at all at this moment. Like every boy or every man, he wants to fulfill his erotic desire by marrying Alyssa. He is not a saint. He wants sexual fulfillment. But he dithers. And he accepts the idealistic interpretation of love over the physical, carnal aspect of love for the moment. And this moment of illusion is very long for Jerome. On the other hand, Alyssa is very clear-sighted. Why she is not, having an engagement or having or agreeing to a marriage and so on. So this chapter will lead to the question of engagement. Jerome will attempt or will ask Alyssa for engagement, as we see here, he is pressurized by Juliet, and Alyssa will refuse him. When Jerome approaches Alyssa with the proposal of engagement, she was trying to put a necklace on her neck. But after Jerome appears, she fails to, tie the necklace and to hook it, and she keeps it on the table. So, like the unhooked necklace, Jerome and Alyssa, they remain perpetually, separate, not joined together. So here the cover shows this moment of Alyssa trying to put this necklace and she can't do it. So this is a symbolic moment, you may say, suggesting the non-fulfillment of their marriage, of their union. I had the conceit to take Juliet's emotion for an effect of my very indifferent flight of eloquence. She suddenly hid her face on my shoulder. Jerome, I wish I could be sure you would make her happy. If she were to suffer through you as well, I think I should detest you. So it is not that Juliet did not love Alyssa. She loved Alyssa, and she also did not, want to come into her way. Since both the sisters love the same man, and both of them do not want to come on each other's way, therefore the decision should be taken by the man. But the man is extremely indecisive in this novel, so destroying the lives of two girls because of his indecision. So Juliet says that I hope that you will make Alyssa happy. Why, Juliet, I cried, embracing her and raising her head. I should detest myself if you only knew. Why, it is only that I may begin life better with her, that I don't want to settle on my career yet. Why, it is upon her that I hang my whole future. Why, I want none of the things that I might be without her. So here Jerome and Juliet are kind of having a dialogue that go at cross purposes. So when Juliet wants to hear a definite commitment from Jerome, Jerome here confirms that he loves Alyssa. So they are at cross purposes. Juliet does not get any assurance from Jerome about his love towards her. She says, and what does she say when you speak to her so? So when you tell her about your love, what does she say? I never speak to her so, never. And that is another reason why we are not engaged yet. There is never any question of marriage between us, not of what we shall do hereafter. That is, I never discuss these things with her, either about the fulfillment of our love or about our marriage in the future. We never discuss these things. Oh Juliet, life with her seems to me so lovely that I dare not. Do you understand? I dare not speak to her about it. Life with her seems to me so lovely. That is, the present relationship that he has with her. Whatever companionship that he gets from her, that is so lovely that he is afraid of disturbing the status quo by telling her, or proposing, marriage to her, or telling her about any future engagement. So he is basically afraid of disturbing the status quo and happy with the present situation. And this is what Elisa would also offer as an excuse later. When Jerome presses her for engagement, she says that why we are happy as we are. But actually she says that very unhappily, because she loves Jerome. So Jerome says that I do not have any discussion with her about the future, about our future life. One day I had asked her whether she wanted to travel, and she said that she didn't. She said that she wanted nothing, that it was enough for her to know that foreign countries existed and that they were beautiful and that other people were able to go to them. She herself did not have any desire for travel. Yes, everywhere, all life seems to me like a long journey. So Jerome himself wants to travel. When Juliet asks him, do you like traveling? Yes, I like to travel. All life seems to me like a long journey with her through books and people and countries. Have you ever thought of the meaning of the words weighing anchor? Yes, I often think of them, she murmured, but barely listening to her and letting her words drop to earth like poor hurt birds, I went on. To start one night, to wake up in the dazzling brilliancy of morning, and so on. So, traveling also leads to separation. And we will see that after his studies are over in Paris, he gets into military service and he travels to Italy and other places. So what does this stand for? Can this travel be a symbol for a spiritual journey? In spite of his travels, Jerome does not have any insight about life. So he comes back to Elisa. Therefore, it appears that staying at one place, Elisa has more insight than him who travelled the world. So they joke that one day Jerome will travel with Elisa in a boat and they will talk about Juliet, and Juliet would write letters to them and so on. And then they come near the steps. When we were drawing near the steps and we were just going to turn back, when Elisa suddenly appeared from out of the shade, she was so pale that Juliet uttered an exclamation. Yes, I don't feel very well, Elisa stammered her hastily. And so she appears very pale because she overhears this conversation and she realizes that Juliet really loves Jerome and wants to hear from him about his commitment to Elisa or whether he loves Juliet at all or not. And when she overhears Jerome's speech, she realizes that Jerome only loves her. Therefore she appears very pale because she cannot make both her sister and her lover happy. So she is divided in her soul. She cannot make both of them happy, so she becomes extremely unhappy herself. She overheard what we were saying, cried Juliet, as soon as she was a little way off. But we didn't say anything which could have vexed her. On the contrary, oh, let me alone, she said, and darted off in pursuit of her sister. So Juliet realized that Elisa understood the meaning of her queries, her questions to Jerome. That Elisa realized that Juliet was in love with Jerome. So Juliet realized this and therefore she was very anxious for her sister. But this leaves Jerome confused. Now we will read the engagement scene, or you may say the attempted engagement, and then this chapter will end. So being pursued by Juliet, Jerome could not sleep at night and kept thinking about, having an engagement, an official engagement with Elisa. A blind wretch that I was, groping after my own errors, not to have thought for a moment that Juliet's words, to which I had paid too little attention and which I remembered so ill, might perhaps have been better understood by Elisa. So here these are faint indications, because the author does not tell the reader as yet what did Juliet's words mean, Juliet's love for Jerome. That is not yet mentioned. No matter, led astray by my anxiety, terrified at the idea that Elisa might distrust me, and imagining no other peril, I resolved, in spite of what I had said to Juliet, and influenced perhaps by what she had said to me, I resolved to overcome my scruples and apprehensions and to betroth myself the following day. So this does not come out of himself spontaneously, but being pressurized by Juliet, he decides to be engaged to Elisa. And it was the evening of his departure. She was sad. Then he comes to her room. It was in the mirror that she first caught sight of me, and she continued to look at me in it for some moments without turning round. Why, said she, was not the door shut? It is, how could you come in? I knocked, but you didn't answer, Elisa. You know I am going tomorrow. She answered nothing, but laid down the necklace, which she could not succeed in fastening. The word engagement seemed to me too bare, too brutal. I used I know not what periphrases in its stead. So Jerome, being an idealist, thought that engagement was a very crude word. So somehow he expressed his idea of getting engaged to Elisa. But I myself was trembling so much that in my fearfulness I avoided looking at her. I was near her, and without raising my eyes I took her hand. She did not free herself, but bending down her face a little and raising my hand a little, she put her lips on it and murmured, No, Jerome, no, don't. Please let us be engaged. My heart was beating so fast that I think she felt it, and she repeated more tenderly, No, not yet. And as I asked her, Why? It is I that ought to ask you why, she said. Why change? I did not dare speak to her of yesterday's conversation, but no doubt she felt I was thinking of it, and as if in answer to my thought said, as she looked at me earnestly, You are wrong, dear. I do not need so much happiness. Are you not happy enough as we are? So we see that Elisa refused to be engaged to him because she was confirmed that Juliet loved him. But since she also loved Jerome, so she could not argue that she was rejecting him. So she said that as such we are happy and I do not want any more happiness. She pushed me away, tore me gently from her, and that was our goodbye. For that evening I was not able to speak to her again, and the next morning when it was time for me to leave, she shut herself up in her room. I saw her at her window, waving goodbye to me as she watched my carriage drive off. So this is how Jerome parts from Elisa, and then after this it will be a long separation, and Jerome will travel, and Elisa will write letters to him. So the mode of narration will change, and instead of narration and direct dialogue, there will be more letters. Right. So chapter 2 ends with a confirmation that the engagement could not be confirmed. Therefore, in spite of establishing the deep love between Jerome and Elisa, the chapter ends in a frustration of this cause, and it shows us two reasons for frustration. One is that it is a frustration for both Jerome and Elisa, and secondly, that it is a frustration for Juliet also. So after this, the question of Juliet's marriage, Abel's love for Juliet, so these will kind of distract us, and the relationship between Elisa and Jerome will be continued through letters, but basically it will be a long separation. Alright, so I have kind of discussed this chapter, and I will stop here. Do you have any questions?